Magdalene sold in Mesmoralia, a prequel in the anthology. Part 1, The Sister, before she was Magdalene the soul broker, before she was ancient and smoke-voiced and full of terrible knowledge. She was Sister Magdalene of St. Cyril's Cathedral, and she believed in redemption. The cathedral sat on Mercy Street, its spires reaching toward a dawn that would never come. It had been beautiful once, stained glass windows depicting saints whose names had been forgotten, pews carved from wood that smelled like answered prayers, an altar where the soulless used to come seeking reunion with their missing pieces. Sister Magdalene had served there for 7 years when she first understood the lie. A man came to confess. His name was Peter Ash, and he'd lost his soul to the sin of despair, had stopped believing in anything good, and his soul, disgusted by the nihilism, had simply walked away one Tuesday afternoon. "I want to feel again," Peter told her through the confessional screen. "Not just guilt, anything, joy, sadness, lust, fear. I would take pain if it meant I could feel." Sister Magdalene had given him the standard counsel: prayer, penance, patience. The soul would return when the heart was ready. God's timeline, not ours. Peter had thanked her politely and hung himself in the cathedral's bell tower that night. When they cut him down, his face was still empty, still hollow, still wearing that terrible vacancy that marked the soulless. He'd died feeling nothing, not even the fear of death. Sister Magdalene stood over his body and realized the church had no answers for this. Prayer couldn't fill a hollow body. Penance couldn't call back a disgusted soul. God, if he existed in Mesmoralia at all, had looked at the soulless and decided they were beyond his jurisdiction. But there were other ways to make the hollow ones feel. Older ways. The flesh, after all, had its own intelligence. Part 2, the transformation. It started small. Sister Magdalene began offering what she called somatic prayer sessions, where the soulless could come to the cathedral and experience physical sensation under the guise of spiritual practice. She would have them kneel on rough stone until their knees ached, stand with arms outstretched until muscles burned, fast until hunger became a presence in their hollow chests. The body remembers what the soul forgets, she told them. Feel the pain. That's proof you're still alive. The soulless came in increasing numbers. They were desperate for anything that penetrated the numbness. And pain was easy, pain was honest. It asked nothing except to be felt. But Sister Magdalene was learning. Pain was one sensation. There were others. She brought in Brother Thomas, a monk who'd lost his soul to the sin of gluttony. Together, they began offering what they called sacred feasts, elaborate meals designed to overwhelm the senses. Rich foods, complex flavors, textures that demanded attention. The soulless ate like they were trying to fill the void inside them, one bite at a time. It didn't work, of course. You can't fill a soul hole with food. but for the duration of the meal. They could feel their tongues, their throats, the weight of fullness in stomachs that had forgotten satiation. Then Sister Magdalene hired Lydia, a dancer who'd lost her soul to the sin of vanity. Lydia performed in the cathedral's nave, movements designed to draw the eye, to quicken the pulse, to awaken the parts of the body that responded to beauty and desire, even when the soul was absent. The soulless watched with those empty eyes, and some of them not all, but some felt the faintest stirring, a ghost of arousal, an echo of want. Sister Magdalene saw it and understood. The body could be taught to respond, even without the soul's permission. The flesh had its own kind of hunger, and hunger, even hollow hunger, was better than nothing. Part 3, the first client. Her name was Virginia Redding, and she'd lost her soul to adultery, not the act itself, but the betrayal, the lying, the slow erosion of her marriage into a performance while she loved someone else. Her soul had left during an anniversary dinner, unable to stomach one more false smile. She came to St. Cyril's on a Thursday evening, when the cathedral was closed to regular worship. "I heard you can make the hollow ones feel," Virginia said. Her empty eyes studied Sister Magdalene. "I want to feel something other than this absence. I want to remember what it was like to be in a body, instead of just operating one." Sister Magdalene led her to a room that had once been a confessional. She'd converted it into something else, something that had no name in religious vocabulary, but was old as religion itself. "The body responds to touch," Sister Magdalene explained, her hands already moving to Virginia's shoulders. "Even without the soul, especially without the soul, because there's no emotional complication, just nerve endings, just sensation." She began to massage Virginia's neck, her shoulders, finding the knots of tension that accumulated even in hollow bodies. Virginia gasped. "I can feel that," she whispered. "I can actually feel that." "The flesh remembers," Sister Magdalene said, her hands moving lower. "The soul may be gone, but the body keeps score. Every touch you've ever received is stored in your muscles, your skin, your bones. I'm just reminding your body what it knows." She worked for an hour, professional and methodical, mapping Virginia's body like a cartographer of sensation. And Virginia wept, not with emotion. The soulless couldn't manage that, but with the physical relief of being touched, being felt, being reminded that she existed in 3 dimensions. When it was over, Virginia paid her in coins that smelled like regret. "Can I come back?" she asked. "Yes," Sister Magdalene said. And she did, and she brought others. Part 4, the Cathedral of Flesh. Within 6 months, St. Cyril's Cathedral had been completely transformed. The pews were gone, replaced by private chambers draped in fabrics that felt like sin and looked like sanctuary. The altar remained, but now it served as the central desk, where Sister Magdalene, no longer wearing her habit, now dressed in simple black that suggested suggested holy orders without claiming them, took appointments. The stained glass still depicted saints, but now they watched over a different kind of communion. The soulless came seeking sensation, and Sister Magdalene provided it. She hired others who'd lost their souls, people who understood the hollow hunger, who could touch the empty bodies with the precise pressure needed to break through the numbness. Former lovers who'd lost their souls to lust. Former artists who'd lost theirs to obsession. Former parents who'd lost theirs to grief. All of them working in the converted cathedral, offering flesh to the fleshless, sensation to the senseless. They called themselves the Order of St. Mary Magdalene. The irony wasn't lost on Sister Magdalene. The city's authorities, such as they were in Mesmoralia, said nothing. The soulless needed this. Everyone knew it. Better they seek physical sensation in a controlled environment than throw themselves off bridges trying to feel the fall. Besides, Sister Magdalene kept careful records, maintained standards. This wasn't exploitation, it was therapy, treatment, a form of mercy for those whom mercy had abandoned. She almost believed it herself. At night, alone in what had been the priest's quarters, Sister Magdalene would kneel and try to pray. The words still came. Habit was stronger than faith. But they felt hollow in her mouth, like stones she was spitting, rather than prayers she was offering. And sometimes, when she touched her own chest, she wondered if her soul was still there. She couldn't tell anymore. Part 5, the night she lost it. His name was Martin Creed, and he'd lost his soul to violence, specifically the murder of his children. His wife's children, technically, stepchildren, but he'd raised them, had loved them, and then one night, in a moment of rage he couldn't even remember clearly, he'd hurt them in ways that couldn't be undone. His soul had left before the blood dried. He came to St. Cyril's on a night when the gaslights were burning low, and the city's twilight felt especially oppressive. "I need to feel something," he told Sister Magdalene. "Anything. I need to know I'm still capable of sensation, of response, because if I'm not, if I'm truly as empty as I feel, then what was the point of any of it?" Sister Magdalene should have turned him away. She could see it in his empty eyes. This man was beyond sensation's reach. Too hollow, too far gone. No amount of touch would penetrate that particular absence. But she was tired, 400 years tired, though she didn't know that yet. Time in Mesmoralia was difficult to track, and she was curious. Could she reach even this depth of emptiness? Could her hands, her technique, her knowledge of the body's secret languages, could any of it breach the void left by murdered children? "Come with me," she said. She led him to her private chamber, the one she never used for clients, the one that had been the cathedral's inner sanctum, where the most sacred relics were once kept. She worked on him for hours, every technique she knew, every touch that had ever drawn response from hollow flesh. She mapped his body like a battle plan, searching for the one point of vulnerability where sensation might break through. Nothing. His body lay there like clay, unresponsive, dead except for the breathing. "Please," Martin whispered. Make me feel anything. The guilt, the horror. I need to feel what I did." And Sister Magdalene, exhausted and desperate and tired of failing, she tried something she'd never tried before. She reached inside him, not physically, spiritually. She took whatever soul she had left, whatever spark of divine connection still animated her after years of converting holy ground into a marketplace of flesh, and she pushed it into the emptiness of Martin Creed. For one moment, one brilliant, terrible moment, it worked. Martin gasped. His eyes flooded with recognition, with horror, with the full weight of what he'd done. He felt everything. The guilt, the agony, the absolute certainty that he deserved every torment existence could devise. He screamed with the voice of someone finally, fully human. And then Sister Magdalene's soul, unable to sustain itself in such a damaged vessel, fragmented. Part of it stayed with Martin, just enough to keep him feeling, to keep him in permanent, exquisite agony. Part of it scattered, dissipating into the twilight. And part of it, the part that had been Sister Magdalene, the girl who'd believed in redemption, the woman who'd thought she could save the hollow ones, simply ceased. She felt it go, like Peter Ash had described, like all of them had described, a tooth pulled from somewhere deeper than bone. She woke up hollow. Part 6. Magdalene the soul broker. Empty Sister Magdalene looked at Martin Creed, who was now sobbing with genuine tears, truly feeling his guilt for the first time since the murders. She felt nothing, not satisfaction, not horror, not even the professional pride that came from a job well done, just the assessment. She'd succeeded in making him feel. The cost was irrelevant. She dressed mechanically and walked out of the private chamber, leaving Martin to his newfound agony in the main hall of the converted cathedral. Her employees were working. The Order of St. Mary Magdalene, touching the hollow ones, making them feel through flesh what they couldn't feel through spirit. She watched them with her new empty eyes and understood suddenly what she'd built. Not a church, not a brothel, a factory, a place where sensation was commodified and sold to those who couldn't produce it themselves, where the mechanics of feeling were divorced from the meaning of feeling, where nerve endings fired on command like trained soldiers. She'd turned mercy into merchandise, and now, soulless herself, she couldn't even feel guilty about it. Hollow Magdalene walked to the altar desk and sat down, opened the ledger, began reviewing the evening's appointments. Virginia Redding at 8, Thomas March at 9. The twins, she never remembered their names at 10. She would see them all, would touch them with hands that no longer trembled with compassion or doubt, would map their bodies with perfect technical precision unencumbered by moral qualms or spiritual crisis. She would be, in fact, the perfect provider of physical sensation, because she no longer confused sensation with meaning. Days passed, weeks, months. Hollow Magdalene ran St. Cyril's with ruthless efficiency. She expanded the services, hired more employees, began trafficking in souls as well, why not? She understood the market now, understood that in Mesmoralia, everything was currency. Souls, sensation, the illusion of feeling. She became known simply as Magdalene. The sister title fell away. No one remembered she'd been holy once, including her. Part 7, the one who remembers. But Martin Creed remembered. He came back every week, not for sensation. He had too much of that now. Thanks to the fragment of soul sister Magdalene had left in him. But to see her, to try to remind her of what she'd been. You saved me, he'd say. You gave me the ability to feel my guilt, to carry what I'd done. That was an act of grace. Magdalene would look at him with her empty eyes. I provided a service, she'd say. You paid for it. Transaction complete. You gave me your soul. A resource allocation error. I've corrected my methodology since then, but Martin persisted. Week after week, sitting in the converted cathedral, watching Magdalene manage her empire of flesh, trying to find some glimmer of the woman who'd sacrificed herself to make a murderer feel again. And slowly, so slowly, he almost didn't notice, something began to change. The fragment of Sister Magdalene's soul inside him began to remember. Not his memories, hers. He started having dreams about kneeling in prayer, about believing in redemption, about a girl who'd come to Mesmoralia seeking to serve God, and found instead a city that God had forgotten. He dreamed of the moment she'd lost her soul, felt it from her perspective, the desperate exhaustion, the final attempt to help, the fragmentation, and he understood. Part of her soul hadn't scattered. It was in him, still intact, still holy, still believing. Magdalene, he said one evening, interrupting her as she reviewed the ledgers. I need you to do something for me. I don't take requests during administrative hours. I need you to take back what you gave me. She looked up. Her empty eyes studied him. Explain. Your soul, the fragment. It's still in me, and it's still yours. I can feel it. It wants to go home. And you, he gestured at her hollow form. You're building this empire, yes, but you're building it on the foundation of what you were. The cathedral, the service, the desire to help. That's all still you, just without the soul to make it mean anything. Meaning is irrelevant, Magdalene said. Function is what matters. Then function better, Martin said. Take back your soul. Let me return to being empty. You need it more than I do. Part 8, the choice. Magdalene considered his offer with the cold calculation of the soulless. Pros. Regaining her soul would restore her emotional capacity, her ability to connect with the hollow ones on a deeper level. Her original mission of redemption. Cons: she would feel guilt again, would have to reckon with what she'd built, would lose the efficient emptiness that made her so effective at running St. Cyril's. No, she said finally, keep it. Why? Because I'm more useful hollow. She returned to her ledger. With my soul, I would question this work, would agonize over whether selling sensation to the soulless is exploitation or mercy, would pray about it, seeking guidance that would never come. Without my soul, I simply do the work, and the work helps people. Does it? Martin leaned forward. Or does it just give them a substitute for healing? A way to feel without actually being whole. There's no wholeness in Mesmoralia, Magdalene said. There's only degrees of emptiness and ways to cope with it. I provide coping mechanisms. That's enough. It's not enough for you. I'm not the priority. The hollow ones are. You are the hollow ones now. Magdalene's hands stilled on the ledger. Perhaps, she said quietly, but I'm a hollow one who can still help the others. And that, she looked at him with her empty eyes, and for just a moment, Martin saw something flicker there. Something that might have been grief if she could still feel it. That's as close to redemption as any of us get. Epilogue: the saint of empty things. Years passed in Mesmoralia's eternal twilight. St. Cyril's Cathedral became famous, a destination for the hollow ones seeking sensation, for the soulless seeking temporary reprieve from their numbness. Magdalene ran it with mechanical grace, touching bodies with hands that no longer trembled, providing physical relief to those who existed beyond spiritual comfort. And Martin Creed came every week, carrying her soul fragment like a burning coal in his chest, offering to return it. And every week she refused. Not yet, she'd say. There's more work to do. But sometimes, late at night, when the cathedral was empty and the gaslights burned low, Magdalene would stand in what had been the nave and remember, not with her soul, which was gone, but with her body, which kept its own records. She'd remember kneeling here, praying here, believing here, and she'd touch her chest where her soul should be, feeling the absence like a phantom limb. Are you still there? She'd whisper to the emptiness. Sister Magdalene, are you still in me somewhere? The emptiness never answered, but in Martin Creed's dreams, the soul fragment would stir, would whisper back across the distance. I'm here, I'm waiting, when you're ready, when you remember that mercy isn't the absence of judgment, it's the presence of love, and love requires a soul. Magdalene would turn away from the memory, return to her ledgers, her appointments, her empire of flesh and sensation and hollow comfort. Tomorrow, more soulless would come seeking to feel, and she would help them, not because she wanted to, not because she believed it was right, but because it was the function she'd chosen, the purpose she'd built from the ruins of her faith, and in a city that existed outside of redemption, outside of grace, outside of God's attention. Sometimes function was all you had. Sometimes it was enough. Sometimes it wasn't, but Magdalene couldn't tell the difference anymore, and that, perhaps, was its own kind of mercy. In Mesmoralia, the Cathedral of St. Cyril still stands, converted and transformed, holy in a way that has nothing to do with God. The soulless still line up outside, seeking sensation. Martin Creed still visits weekly, carrying a fragment of light in his chest. And Magdalene still works, hollow but useful, empty but helping. A saint of nothing who serves the disciples of absence. What she sold in Mesmoralia wasn't really sensation. It was the promise that even without a soul, the body could remember what it meant to be human, even if that memory was a lie, even if it hurt, even if it changed nothing. The flesh remembers, even when the spirit forgets. And in the space between memory and forgetting, that's where Magdalene lives, forever